I supposed to start this show while you guys are still back there then?
Yeah,
Is that right?
Then we'll sing after you make your notes.
Oh, okay. Good morning and welcome. Happy Mother's Day. I don't know of any exciting announcements. Does anyone want to talk about the choir area? I mean, we tore this pew out, and the next step is figuring out what to do next. So is that about it, Scott? I mean, that's... So, under that, is there any announcements? We got one.
We're going to do the band.
There you go.
Thank you. I just wanted to let people be aware of an action alert that is being sponsored by the Center for Worker Justice tomorrow. As I'm sure you're aware, there was a ICE raid in Mount Pleasant on the Wednesday. 32 workers taken from their factory jobs, leaving their families without support. The vigil is going to be Monday at 5 o'clock, so tomorrow at 5 in front of Senator Chuck Grassley's office. I have flyers with me and some downstairs. I also have it posted on my Facebook page, but really would like to have as many faith communities there supporting what our church supports. So, thank you.
Just a sidebar on that. Our youngest son teaches in Mount Pleasant. And the day after that happened, he had a lot of kids crying in class, and he still does not have kids coming back to class because he's afraid that they're going to get, whatever's going to happen to them. So, again, it's a very questionable situation. Things are very much up in the air at this point down there. So, any other announcements? Okay, I guess we're... Please rise for the call to worship. O God, who called all life into being.
The earth, sea, and sky are yours.
Your presence is all around us.
Every atom is full of your energy.
Your spirit enlivens all who walk the earth.
With her we yearn for justice to be done.
For creation to be freed from bondage, for the hungry to be fed, for captives to be released.
Your kingdom of peace come on earth.
Together, let us confess the way we have missed the mark in our lives. Merciful God,
We confess that we have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed, by what we have done and by what we have left undone. We have not loved you with our whole heart and mind and strength. We have not loved our neighbors as ourselves. In your mercy, forgive what we have been. Help us amend what we are and direct what we shall be, so that we may delight in your will and walk in your ways, for the sake of your kingdom. Amen.
I believe that God forgives and sets us free.
We believe that God forgives and sets us free, and at the day's beginning, we commit ourselves to following where Christ calls and to loving one another. Amen.
Friends, hear the good news. Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed. Hallelujah.
The peace of the risen Christ be with you.
And also with you.
Hey,
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Peace
thanks.
be with you.
Thank you.
Happy Mother's Day.
same to you. Peace, yes, thanks. Okay, I'd like to invite the kids to come up for discovery time. How are you? Anybody else? I got candy. Yeah. Do you guys like magic?
Yeah.
I've got a magic trick I want to show you. It is pretty amazing. Let's see. You ready? Oh, that's not so good. But here, here's a good magic trick. I'll just set this here. Okay, so what colors are these?
Red and blue.
Red and blue. Okay, now, so I'm going to run these through my hand, and look. Now what color are they?
Yellow and green.
Oh, is that amazing or what? You want to see me change it back? Oh, isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know. You want to try it? Yeah, just pull that out. Yeah, see. Very good. Yeah, very good. Okay, I'll try another one. All right, so could you hold that for me just for a second? All right. So what I'm gonna do is I want to take this here. Okay, I got a white handkerchief, and then I'm gonna. You know, white is actually all the colors from sunlight. I don't really fully understand that. It has to do with wavelengths, but anyhow, I learned that in physics class a long time ago. I'll get that in there. Okay. Now, here's the magic. All gone. Pretty good, huh? Thank you very much. Okay. So magic, let me take off my fake thumb here first. Okay. There we go. So it wasn't really magic, was it? No. Yeah, but it was good. I mean, for a while it was pretty neat until you find out how it was done. Well, who was the best magician of all? We're in church, so it would be.
That guy who got out of every trap.
Yeah, no. Think church. The guy who changed water into wine. Yes. Jesus was the best magician of all, wasn't he?
Yeah, but Harry Houdini was the second.
Well, second, yeah. Harry Houdini was second. Yeah, he was. But you know, Jesus wasn't really a magician in the way that Harry Houdini was, because Harry Houdini did tricks that were designed to amaze people and cause them to applaud. And Jesus did things that were meant to help people and that were designed to teach people something about what it's like to be a human being, what God is like, and so forth. And that's what I'm going to talk about after you guys go back with your candy and sit down. I'm going to talk about something that Jesus did that was kind of magic. But it really was more than that. But before you go back, before I give you your candy and go back, there is a kind of magic that you can do. You can use it to change one thing into another, and that's the magic of love. Okay, so let me tell you how that might work. So you come home from school, and maybe your mom is sad about something. It's Mother's Day, and so the magic of love could turn her frown into a smile. if when you think she might be sad, if you just went up and gave her a great big hug. Right? So you would change her from being maybe sad to being less sad, or maybe even happy. Or somebody at school, is having a bad day, or people are picking on them, and so they're feeling really, pretty down. And if you were to go over to them and put your arm around them and say, I really like you, that could change their day a lot. That could change an unhappy day into a happy day. So that's magic that you guys can do, and that's the magic of love. So anyway, well, that's what I got for you this morning, except for the candy. So help yourself. There you go. Well, maybe just two is okay. Since you got two, why don't the rest of you take another one? All right?
Yeah, I got the same one.
There we go. Is there another one that you'd like to have? No? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I got the same thing.
All right. Great. Here's a third one. Don't tell anybody. All right. Yeah, the candy disappeared. That's magic too, right? I don't think we read the lesson, did we? Is there a Bible around someplace?
Well, there should be a Bible.
There we go. Yeah, good. All right. Let me read this magic story that I want to talk about this morning. It's in John's Gospel. It's in the 4th chapter. Okay. So then Jesus came to Cana in Galilee, where he had changed the water into wine. Now there was a royal official whose son lay ill in Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." And the official said to him, "Sir, come down before my little boy dies." And Jesus said to him, "Go, your son will live." The man believed the word that Jesus had spoken to him and started on his way. As he was going down, his slaves met him and told him that his child was alive. So he asked them the hour when he began to recover, and they said to him, "Yesterday at 1 in the afternoon." By the way, yesterday, it would actually be the same day, but in ancient Israel, and still today for Jews, the new day starts when the sun goes down. Okay, so if it was like 7 o'clock at night, noon would have been yesterday to them. So they asked the hour when he began to recover, and they said to him, "Yesterday at 1 in the afternoon, the fever left him." And the father realized that was the hour when Jesus had said to him, "Your son will live." So he himself believed, along with his whole household. Now this was the second sign that Jesus did after coming from Judea to Galilee. Okay, so that's the magic story that I want to talk about. But I'm going to tell you as much as I know about this story. It's really an amazing story, and just again, what I was telling the kids is that Jesus didn't change mice into elephants just by way of dazzling people and drawing attention to himself. What he did was he did things that were unusual by way of helping us to better understand who he was, what he was up to, who God is, and to some extent who we are. So I want to unpack this teaching event, if you will, this morning. But before I do that, I need to kind of set the stage. So what I'd like you to do is to imagine that this room is ancient or first century Palestine, okay? And that would be north. So this part of the sanctuary, you guys are Judea, okay? And you guys are a bunch of religious snobs. Well, really, the Judeans in the first century, they felt as though they were the most Jewish people in Palestine. And their capital, of course, was Jerusalem. Okay? And it was actually the religious snobs who killed Jesus. So shame on you. Okay? All right, you guys are the Samaritans. Now, Samaritans were people that Judeans regarded as half-breeds. And it had to do with the civil war that had happened 700 years earlier. But the Samaritans had their own sort of way of understanding Hebrew Scripture, and the Judeans thought that their ideas about God were screwed up. And so they wouldn't have much to do with them. In fact, if you were Judean, the worst thing you could say about somebody was that they were a Samaritan. Okay? Sort of like the N-word to Judeans. They were like, the Samaritans were like, maybe like how we think about the Mormons, you know. They also believe in Jesus, but they've taken the story and added stuff and kind of screwed it up. So they were in the middle of the country, avoided by the Judeans, and then also by the Galileans. And you guys are the Galileans. You're in the northern part of the country. And you guys are kind of an interesting group in that you're sort of a mixture of Greek-speaking non-Jewish people who had lived there for several hundred years before Jesus' time. But then, about 100 years before Jesus was born, some of you Judeans became pioneers and moved up here to Galilee. Okay? And so there's a mixture of sort of Hellenistic or Greek thinking stuff going on with Judean or Jewish thinking stuff, and Judeans aren't real crazy about Galileans either. Plus they talk funny. They've got kind of a bucolic or hick accent that Judeans regularly made fun of. Okay? So Galilee, and Galilee, by the way, was the Iowa of Palestine. They had some really good farmland, like this area right here. This is called the Jezreel Valley, and it was the best place for growing just about anything you wanted. And of course, Jesus was from the Galilee, grew up in the Galilee. So that's the lay of the land. Now, the Samaritans and the Judeans are ruled by Rome. By, at the time that Jesus was alive, a guy by the name of Pontius Pilate, who didn't live in Jerusalem. He lived over, that's the Mediterranean Ocean over there. He lived at a town called Caesartown, Caesarea, and he would come down to Jerusalem occasionally. But this was the Roman part of Palestine, and this part up here was ruled by a guy by the name of Herod, not the Herod who killed the babies, in Bethlehem, his son. Okay? And Herod Antipas was his name. He lived over here. This is the Sea of Galilee over here. Okay? And he lived at a town over there that he named Tiberias, after the current Caesar, because he was a toady of that Roman emperor, and he was more Greek really than he was Jewish, and he was kind of a bad guy. He imposed heavy taxes on the people, and he spent a lot of his time in Rome or Athens, and plus he married his brother's wife, which was not a good thing, and when John the Baptist complained about it, he had his head cut off. Anyhow, so that's kind of, the lay of the land, except that up here this is, again, the Iowa of Palestine, But there was a northernmost part that was the hill country. And it was kind of a bad neighborhood. And Cana was in the heart of this bad neighborhood. When Jesus was 10 years old, assuming he was born in 4 BC, which most historians think might have been the case, when he was 10 years old, in 6 of the Common Era, there was a tax revolt. And what happened was there was a Roman garrison at Cana that the people of Cana sort of overthrew. They rushed the place and they killed the probably a smaller cohort of Roman soldiers there. And what happened, of course, then was that Herod and his Roman buddies came in and quashed this revolt. But at Cana, what they did was they leveled the town. And they crucified all of the inhabitants except for a few, which they hauled off as slaves. Okay? So that would have been in about 6 AD or 6 of the Common Era. And this part of Galilee continued to be a kind of a hideout for revolutionary folks called zealots in those days. If you want to think about it this way, it was like Sherwood Forest. Okay? And Herod was like Prince John. Okay? But at the city of Capharnaum, which would have been right here on the Sea of Galilee, there was an official. In the Greek, the word is basilikos. It means ruler. Who would have been like the sheriff of Nottingham. And he wasn't a sheriff in the way that we think of sheriffs today. He was really much more powerful than that. He had a territory over which he was responsible for tax collection. Now, he didn't do the actual collection himself, but he would farm out the job of collecting taxes to his toadies, and then they would bring it in, and then he would get it to Prince John or Herod, and then Herod would send part of it to his emperor buddy Tiberius in Rome. Another thing, though, that sheriffs did was they loaned money. And there was this kind of scheme going on at the time that Jesus lived where, because peasants were so heavily taxed, about 40%, and they weren't rich people to begin with, and so they would go into debt. The sheriff of Nottingham, this official at Capharnaum, would loan them money at high interest. When they couldn't pay it back, he would confiscate their land, allow them to stay and work the land as a laborer, a tenant farmer. So it was a bad deal. This was the time and place in which Jesus was operating, and so when Jesus talks about "I have good news for the poor," Jesus talks a lot about poor people and wanting to set things right, and so that's why. That was the environment in which he lived. So anyway, this guy, this sheriff of Nottingham fella, probably a very bad dude, but good dad. Has a son who's sick. And he hears that Jesus, who, by the way, Jesus began his ministry down over on the other side of the Jordan River by Jericho. And then he went up the river to Nazareth, which would have been about right here, picks up mom, and goes up to Cana for a wedding. And scholars think that because his mother was concerned that when the wine ran out that Jesus should do something about it, that maybe the wedding was the wedding of his sister. and that there was a family connection with Cana. We don't know. Some scholars have even said it was Jesus' wedding, but that's very highly speculative. Anyhow, so he does this wedding at Cana, and then he goes over to Capharnaum, where apparently he has a home, or there's some connection that Jesus has with Capharnaum. He stays for a brief time, and then he goes down to Jerusalem for the Passover. And this, by the way, is in the year 28 AD. He's down there, and when he's down there, it's when he cleans out the temple. And doing that got him a lot of enemies of some very highly placed people in Judea. He's down there, though, for a month after he cleans out the temple, and he does some signs and wonders, apparently. And then he comes home to Galilee, but rather than doing what every other decent Jewish person would have done, Judean or Galilean, rather than go down to the Jordan River and up and then around, he comes straight up through the territory that you guys live in, Samaria, and has this encounter with a woman at the well, and turns her, a woman who, it's complicated, but was an outcast in the town that she lived in, Shechem, that was the capital city, turns her into a hero, turns her into the person who leads the rest of the people of Samaria to Jesus. And by the way, the Samaritans are the only people as a group who accept Jesus. The Judeans kill him, the Galileans run him off, the Samaritan, these Mormons, they're the ones who embrace him. So anyhow, then he comes up and he goes back to Cana. It's like his safe house, because he's a little bit in trouble with the Judeans down here, and probably a little bit in trouble with Prince John, and so he's hanging out in this rebel territory at Cana. So back to the guy, the official with the sick son, the sheriff of Nottingham, much hated. He hears about Jesus, hears that he's done some signs and wonders down in Jerusalem, done some healing stuff. He's desperate. He's a dad who loves his kids. Give him that. And so he decides to go up to Cana to see if he can get Jesus to come back to Capharnaum and heal his son. And it's about a 7-hour, it's 12 miles, and it's over a very hilly area. And he has to pass through the valley of Arbel, in which there are caves up on the top where zealots would sit and shoot arrows down at Roman caravans. It was a very dangerous place, and if you go there today, you can still see zealot graffiti on some of the cave walls. So he had to come through this very dangerous valley in order to get to Cana, but he loves his kid, and so that's what he does. So he walks there. Again, it's about a 7-hour trip. It's during the summertime, we think. It would have been very hot, and he finally arrives in town at the 7th hour, which would have been about 1 o'clock. And he looks for Jesus. Has someone say, "I've heard Jesus is here in town. My master would like to talk to him." And this person finds Jesus, and Jesus comes and says, "Yeah, what do you need?" "My son is ill, to the point of death. Would you please come and help him?" And Jesus says, "You know, you people are really something. All you care about signs and wonders." And probably begins to walk away. You know, I'm a Democrat. Well, actually, I'm a Euro-socialist, but I vote Democrat. And that said, if Kim Reynolds, the governor, a Republican, state of Iowa, were to call me or send somebody to say, the governor would like to ask a favor of you. Of me? The governor wants me to do her a favor? Well, sure. I'd be all puffed up, you know. I'd be dropping into conversations all over the place that the governor had asked me to do her a favor. Okay? Because that would build me up, wouldn't it? Huh? And if I said to her, no, not interested, how do you think she'd feel? Because she's a very important person. And I'm a nobody, basically. Huh? And if I dissed her, think she might be mad? I think she might be. I think anyone would in that situation. Okay? Jesus disses this guy. All you people care about signs and wonders. What does this very important guy do? A guy who probably has the power of life and death over people, or knows people who do have that power. What does he do? Well, in one ancient manuscript, it says he threw himself into the dirt and begged Jesus to come with him. And Jesus turns around, goes over the guy, picks him up. Go. Your son's going to be fine. He's going to be just fine. And what does the guy do? He just turns and goes. And he walks back down through this dangerous territory, through the Valley of Arbel. And when he gets close to town, his servants, who are waiting for him to return, rush and say, hey, guess what? Your son's going to live. The fever broke, whatever it was. What time? Well, it was the 7th hour. And the guy knew that that was the time that Jesus had said, go, your son will live. Okay? Now, a couple of things. What's remarkable about this guy? Besides the fact that he had the courage to risk his life to save his son. What's remarkable about him? What's that? His faith. Why was his faith remarkable? Because that's exactly what Jesus says. Never in all of Israel, he says, have I seen faith like that guy has faith. Huh? Why? Why did he say that? Why did Jesus say that? How do you heal somebody in the first century? What do you have to do? If you're a healer, what?
To be here.
You have to be there. You have to do what? Lay on your hands. That's how healing is done. So when Jesus says, go, your son will live, this guy doesn't say, yeah, okay, but don't you, aren't you going to come with me? He just goes. He has complete trust. The other thing is, this guy, this powerful guy, this fellow, when he walks down the sidewalk in Capernaum, people get off the sidewalk so that he can pass by. He empties himself of all of his pride, all of his dignity, all of his puffery, and throws himself at Jesus' feet. So, please help me. That's faith. And faith he does with his feet. Not by reciting a creed or saying a prayer. He does it with his feet. He risks his life. He empties himself. And then when Jesus says, go, your son will live, He absolutely trusts. And he goes. Huh? And Jesus says, whoa. I've never seen faith like that in my life. And in one fell stroke, Jesus turns the sheriff of Nottingham, maybe even worse than the sheriff of Nottingham, into a hero. Huh? Same thing he did with the Samaritan woman. Turns an outcast into the hero of the village. And if Jesus can do that with the Samaritan woman, if Jesus can do that with the sheriff of Nottingham, might be able to do it with us too, huh? Turn us into heroes as well. If we will but lose some of our pride, lose some of our puffed upness, and say, hey, I'm yours. You know, I trust you. What do you want me to do? So that's what we learn about faith. What do we learn about Jesus in this? He doesn't go and put his hands on. He simply speaks. And it happens. Who else simply speaks and it happens? Let there be light. Boom. God. Later on, Jesus will say, if you've seen me, you've seen the God who sent me. Doesn't mean that Jesus is God in the way that we tend to think about God being infinite and all-powerful and all that. But if you've seen me, you know the most important thing there is to know about God. Not his omnipotence, not his omniscience, not his ability to be everywhere at the same time, you know, all of that business. But you've seen into the heart of God, and you recognize God as fundamentally, essentially a God of endless love and mercy, who wants to break down walls and turn everybody into a hero, and turn others into those who see everybody else as heroes too. So that's the story of the healing of the official son. And I think it's a great story. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share it. So I think we're singing a hymn now, right? Yes, let's do the choir. Oh, we didn't do the. Did we cheat you out of it? Yeah, let's do the anthem.
Yeah, Gary, we get to do back-to-back tunes now.
Yeah.
So. Besides what's in here, are there any joys and concerns? Well, I'll mention at least one. If you don't know it, the state track meet's coming up this week. Both head coaches are in attendance here today, even though one had to sneak out. Coach Whitman, Coach Lesmeyer, I'm sorry, Nate, Coach Williams. And we have a participant in attendance also, who probably runs the most brutal race there is to run. He runs the 400-meter hurdles. So that means he's got to sprint for 400 meters. And how many hurdles are in that race? 10. So he's got to run 400 meters, got to sprint 400 meters, and jump over 10 things in the process. So anyway, pray for these people that are going to the state track meet. So anyway, are there any other announcements? Oops.
I'm just for Mary Boudreau, who has been working for years in our school district, and especially at the high school as of recently, but she's really trying to beat cancer and is having a tough time, and her family's been in and out, and so strength to her. Mary Boudreau.
Thank you. So, Lord, hear thy prayers. Anything else? Okay. For the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, please honor us with the offering now. Please join me in a prayer of dedication. Loving God,
We thank you for this season, with its promise of new life and new opportunities. Use us in our days to love and to serve you, and to witness to Christ, whom you have raised from the dead. May our gifts and our lives proclaim Christ's resurrection to the world.
Okay, today's not only Mother's Day, but we're also celebrating Birthday Day. So I see at least a couple of you out there, so come on down. Sue was hoping we'd forgot. Here we go, give them the scoop. So anyway, happy birthday to everybody that's got a birthday in May. There you go, leftover candy.
Go in peace, serve the Lord.
There we go. Yep. That is it. Now it's time for the poster.